Brilliant. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Cabinet meeting today, 29th of June. The first item is to receive apologies for absence.
I've received apologies from Councillor Paul Heinrich and Callum Ringer.
Okay, I don't believe there are any others. The second item is to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of June. Were there any questions on the minutes, members? No. Okay, well, I propose they're accepted. Seconded by Lucy, I presume. All in favour? Yeah. Unanimous, thank you. Don't think we have any public questions or statements that have been made aware of. Declarations of interest, please. No. Not from anyone. There are no items of urgent business. Member questions at this stage. You're okay for now? Yeah. Recommendations from Overview and Scrutiny Committee, item 7. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There were no recommendations from the last meeting of Overview and Scrutiny for Cabinet to consider today.
Okay, thank you for your time. Item 8, recommendations from the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Party. Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Morning, everybody. Yeah, this was one item on the agenda at the last working party. It's the health protocol, which we already have. We're simply bringing this up to date in the light of recent introductions of different planning policies over time. We did have concerns about it. They're mentioned in the second paragraph at the bottom of the first page of the agenda there in the summary. So there's work to do. It's been delegated to the planning policy manager and myself to look at this further and then feed back some amendments to it.
Okay, thank you. So that's recommended to us. Are we happy to accept? Proposed by Andrew, seconded by myself. All in favour? Yeah, thank you. Was there anything further on that point before we moved on? No. Okay. So the item 9 is the corporate plan for 2023 to 2027. First of all, I'd like to thank officers for their time and commitment in helping to get this as far as the draft for approval. Set out many of the key themes which my party campaigned for during the elections, recognising the key challenges and opportunities ahead for the authority. We are, of course, looking to deliver an annual action plan as opposed to a standalone delivery plan, enabling more agility, really, to respond to those factors and enabling focus on the tasks we set out to deliver. And I believe enabling greater cross-council engagement on those factors. We will, of course, have to respond to a great deal of change over the next 4 years, with the certainly unpleasant inflationary pressures, the upcoming outcomes of the government standardisation of waste consultation, potential agreement, county deals, and numerous other factors. We have selected 5 themes highlighting our commitment to the environment and net zero, our communities, addressing the housing needs, the local economy, and stability and governance. Contextual data, graphics, and presentation, and of course an introduction by myself, will be completed next. And I'm pleased to present this draft to Cabinet today for approval, enabling that final development work to take place. There is, of course, continuity here from our previous commitments, particularly with the drive to reach net zero by 2030, but also other factors, including continuing our programme of investment in public toilet facilities, continuing to support those facing hardship, accessibility and inclusion, temporary accommodation, and various other aims and ambitions. Much of the work is already very much underway in progress on annual action plan key actions for this year as set out in the back pages. And we will be looking to work with, we will be looking forward to working with the council as a whole to deliver on these and much more in the next 4 years. That's all from me for now. Is there anyone else that wants to say anything on the corporate plan at this point in time? Any of you want to say anything? Okay, so we obviously go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Yeah, just to make the point, Mr. Chairman, that in comparison to this stage 4 years ago at the start of previous administration, we're well advanced on this particular aspect of our service delivery. I think it's somewhat helped by the fact that we have succeeded our own administration this time round. And I'm pleased to see that it's this well advanced, and that I hope the corporate plan will reflect the endorsement of our manifesto at the recent election, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased we progressed this far this soon, and certainly the return of our party to administration has certainly helped with that process, of course. And you know, I'm very pleased to endorse and propose the recommendations as set out on the front page of item 9, that we agree the content of the draft and the remaining other recommendations there. So was there anyone else that wanted to speak to that? Any questions about the process from here on? Obviously, we will look to send this to scrutiny. Lucy, go ahead.
Just, I guess I would like to know, is it at the next scrutiny meeting, the July one, that it will go to? Okay, because I think the value of scrutiny is going to be really important to make sure that we have clarified what we want to do, because a lot of these plans, as we've seen in other councils, can be so jargony that the general public don't understand what we're trying to achieve. So I'm quite grateful that this is going to be less jargony.
Yeah.
The only word that I really don't like, and I think everybody knows that I don't like it, is the word deliver, because we are not a postal service and we don't do pizzas. So I think delivering needs to be articulated in a slightly different way, so that our local residents really understand what we're trying to achieve. And that's the only comment that I've got with regards to it, aside from the fact that I'm looking forward to the challenge of financial sustainability that the global and national picture influences on a daily basis.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. So certainly we've made it our mission to avoid as much of that sort of language as possible. You know, I was looking through and again last night and thinking, well, one question someone might have is what's coastwise. Of course, you know, that's developing a greater understanding of the coastal environment, and there's all sorts of action points arising from that. But we've certainly tried to avoid, you know, as much of that language as possible. Obviously, recognizing it's a high-level document. There is some detail still to be added in terms of numbers of affordable homes to be delivered, but I don't foresee many more changes in terms of that level of content. There's obviously work to be done in terms of the contextual data, graphics, presentation. So were there any further points? No. Okay. Well, I'm happy to make the proposal, seconded by Wendy, and all of those in favour, please. Thank you. Sorry, excuse me. Item 10 is the 2022-2023 outturn report. Lucy, go ahead.
I apologise for my general excitement over the next two reports. Finance is something that historically I'm quite passionate about. And I'm sure that you'll all get sick of my excitement of these things over the coming months. What we have here is essentially a much better position than we had envisaged. And I'd like to thank officers for their hard work in helping us achieve that. The surplus for the 21-22 financial year was transferred to general reserves as we had a deficit forecast. When we looked at the outturn position, I believe it was November 22, was that period 6. We looked at a deficit of about 900,000. The one that came for period 10 was lesser so. And that is it on page 37 of this report? Yeah, if you look at 2.6, you'll see what our forecast was for period 10. So we're in a better position. So rather than needing the entire amount that we transferred into reserves, we need a smaller proportion of it. The reasons for the increased costs are set out in the report, so I'm happy to take any questions about it. But our finances are in a much stronger and better position than most local authorities. So a huge thanks to the entire team across the council for working with us on that, and for the finance team for pulling this report together in such a presentable way. Now, we do appreciate that many people may not fully understand the report, so I'm happy for either Tina as director or myself to take any questions on clarity.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. Tina, was there anything you wanted to say at this point in time? Are you happy just to see if anyone has any questions?
No, other than has Councillor Shires has already said that we are in a better financial position than we might have been. Expenditure has been I think managed during the year, and we've had some additional grants in, which has helped us out. In terms of capital, we have sort of saved on some capital financing costs because of delays in the capital programme, which have been largely unavoidable. We will be looking to create the reserve for net zero, separating that out from the delivery plan reserve, £500,000, so that we can actually look to invest in some net zero schemes or reducing our carbon emissions, which is pleasing to see. And then on the temporary accommodation as well, we are looking to bring forward on the capital side from 24-25 and 25-26, 2 years budget for capital into 23-24, so that we can acquire some properties now which are needed now rather than in 2 years' time. So those are the main points, really. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And sorry, the microphones do seem to be very sensitive today, so I'll just make sure I switch mine off whilst others are on. And thank you, Tina, and to the whole team for the development of this report. Were there further questions? Christopher, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I'm surprised the reaction of Councillor Shires, given that I think this is the first time, I believe, that we're actually forecasting an overspend for the budget, which is concerned. But I note that's on provisional figures. So a question for Councillor Shires or Officer Stankley: when will we actually have a finalised position as opposed to provisional one, please? And also, what's stopping us? What's stopping the finalisation of that now?
I'll take that if I could. Yeah, respond to that. Yeah. As we've previously discussed, we have the 2021 accounts outstanding, which the auditors are looking at literally as we speak. So we're hoping to get those signed off next week or the week after, with the chair of GRAC being able to, he has delegated authority to sign those off for us. 21-22 will then be finalised, but it is sort of a knock-on effect of that we need to get each year's accounts finalised before we can firmly put forward the balances into the next financial year. So 21-22 will be audited hopefully in July. That is the plan, or early August, if the auditors cannot bring it forward to July, but they're hoping to bring it forward into July. We can then have the final balances for 21-22, which we won't have until the accounts are audited. And then they will carry forward as the opening balances for 22-23. And we will have the final position with all the audit adjustments required, if there are any. And the audit done, hopefully, the plan is with the auditors, it is agreed that we shall be able to sign those accounts off. I think it will be coming to the December GRAC meeting. The issue with not having done the accounts, which is affecting the final outturn for 22-23, and does create a bit of a risk in terms of not being fully assured of our financial position and where we are going forwards, is due to both a lack of resource in the finance team, which we have been addressing over this past month or so in terms of recruitment. You know, the people in there have worked incredibly long hours. We have one of the team members that has 60 days of leave accrued because she's spent so much time, she hasn't been able to take leave, and that's not right. You know, so the team have been working as hard as they can to get things done. But then we also have the national issue, which is, I think, quite well publicised, is in the national press, of the lack of resource within external audit. With all the big firms that are carrying out audits, they are really struggling with resource, which then has a knock-on effect in terms of getting local authority accounts audited promptly. And that is why we don't have that final outturn position now, which we wouldn't have had even if we'd been caught up, because it would only be provisional outturn position until the accounts are actually audited and signed off.
And just to answer the point as to why I am pleased that we have 261,000 rather than the estimation that we've had previously, is because when we sat as a full council on the 5th of October and put the 216,000 into the general fund, because we anticipated that we would need that to cover the deficit. And I'm sure that I don't need to educate Councillor Cushing onto why we are in the position where we have such financial volatility across the country. But I will do if you feel it's necessary. We don't need all that money. That's why I'm pleased that we don't need to spend all that money. And when we looked again, I'll repeat, in November at the 900,000, and again, we saw that coming down, but still as high, where we had anticipated the 616 would need to cover the deficit that has came from things that are not in our control. We don't need all that. And that's what I'm pleased about. With thanks again to officers.
Mr. Chairman, can I come back, please? Got a couple more questions, if I may. Well, thank you for that, Councillor Shars. Noted. I also look forward that we are the budgets predict a considerable shortfall in the years to come. So I look forward to hearing what plans this administration has in order to close those gaps in future, which is something the opposition has been asking for many a year now. For Officer Stankley, if I can come back on a couple of things, please. In the last GRAC meeting, we suggested it would be very helpful to have a timeline of when all these accounts are due to be published. And I think that would be helpful for everyone if that could be noted and sent round. So it's something we've got to keep an eye on. Also, in terms of, I note on the retained business rates in particular, we're showing a deficit of just over £500,000. It says it could be quite volatile. So what risk do you think there is that the numbers we've got before us could move significantly, or is it just they might nudge one way or the other a bit?
On the basis of the work that we've done, we are fairly happy. It's a matter of opinion usually with the auditors as to whether we've dealt with various bits within the collection fund, which is very complicated appropriately. I don't think that there is anything that I'm aware of outstanding in terms of collection fund for 21-22. We're looking at, sorry, 2021. We're looking at 21-22 for the adjustments. Volatility again is due to mostly external factors, sort of businesses closing or differences in rateable values and applications for relief. It is quite a volatile area in terms of being able to predict accurately the income that we will get as businesses come and go. And as I say, we've had a revaluation which affects the amount of discretionary rate relief we can give. I think we do set aside, we have a retained business rates reserve, which is for such fluctuations. Risk-wise, it is one of our big areas of risk, but it is managed as well as it can with the fact that we can't influence it. You know, that the actual figures are out of our control as such, because we can't influence businesses coming and going. You know, so we manage it as well as we can, which is why we have that reserve.
Were there any further questions? No? Okay, well, Lucy has recommended this for approval. I'm happy to second that. All those in favour, please. Thank you. Item 11 is the Treasury Management Annual Reports.
Sorry, Chairman. Could I ask your indulgence that we would bring item 15 forward, and not to steal Councillor Lucy Shire's thunder and let her breathe for a minute. The officer, Sonia Shooter, has to leave at 12, so it might be helpful if we
Okay.
could discuss that now.
Item 15, the Information, Advice and Advocacy. Okay, that's okay for you, Lucy? Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Wendy, do you want to introduce us to this item?
Yeah, I can introduce this report to you. So it's basically giving a grant to the Citizens Advice Bureau for supporting people in North Norfolk. It's something that we do, it's something that county does, and also town and parish councils do, is support the organisation. They have seen something like a 22% increase this year on people asking them for help with debt relief, with income uplift due to the crisis, the various crises that we're going through at the moment. So I put this before you, and hoping to receive any questions, or Sonia's here as well.
Okay, Sonia, do you have anything to add at this stage? No, thank you. Well, we obviously, you know, we bring this item forward annually, I believe. And mentally important works, perhaps more so at the moment than you know, many of the years before. I would certainly seek support Wendy's recommendation, but were there any further questions from members? Lucy, go ahead.
Just that I would probably like to see some data in there about face-to-face contact as well, break it down in how people are contacting citizens' advice. Is that possible? Future reporting, not at this moment. I'm happy to support.
Absolutely, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay, so okay.
Yeah, just to say there was a supplementary annual report that should have been, that was attached, whether people have struggled to open that, but that gave a lot more detail that was received from the citizens' advice on face-to-face and all the different kinds of contacts, breakdown of issues, and also the population profile, but it may not have opened. So I can send that round separately, and I apologise for that.
Okay, thank you, Sonia. That's brilliant. Any further questions? Okay, so the recommendations as set out have been proposed by Wendy. I'm happy to second them. All of those in favour, please. Yeah, no, thank you. And thank you for your time, Sonia. Back to item 11, the Treasury Management Annual Report for 22-23. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Me again. So what I would really like to do is, in order for people to really understand what we've been dealing with, let me turn to the right page. The pages that indicate the economy and the interest rates, which have greatly influenced this, is page 80 to 81. I'm not going to read that out to everybody, but it paints a really easy to understand picture of what is influencing the Treasury at the moment. Obviously, the interest rates have increased again, and we're expecting to see that within our. I think we're looking in the next couple of weeks to see that in our own investments. Again, I'm really grateful to the team. The report is easy to follow. I'm getting regular updates on how the picture's changing. I appreciate that everybody may not be as excited about this as I am. So I'm open to any questions that would help anybody to understand where we are and what's going on as we move forward.
Okay, thank you ever so much, Lucy. And yes, certainly a very, very clearly presented report. I don't have any questions myself. I wanted to say at this stage, or if there are.
The only thing that I'd like to say is that I'm not sure whether the report is that we've recently, in the beginning of we changed our Treasury advisors who were previously our inflows, and they're now the asset services, and the provided with the template and new template. So I'm pleased that everyone's found it a more reasonable document. The interest rates are still climbing, so we're pleased with that from the point of view of it earning us additional investment income, but do appreciate that it does mean that there is an adverse impact on our residents, in terms of adding to the pressures with cost of living crisis. For anyone that's got borrowing or a mortgage, etc. We're fortunate in that we haven't got any external borrowing at the moment, so we do not have any increased costs from additional borrowing at the minute. And that's all I really wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Yes, you've outlined, I suppose, what is we're in a very good position on that front, of course. Further questions? Go ahead, Nigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just for clarification, if I may, in round terms, if I've got it right, we've got investments of one sort or another, which are around the 45 million, and we have got borrowings around the 32 million. Is that correct?
No. I think we've got investments of around 22 million and borrowing of 0.
Hence my question, because I'm not at all clear in the detail of the papers, but leave that one for now. I'm happy to go back into the papers and clarify. The thrust of my question is to try to assure myself where we are in terms of our borrowings and what we have in terms of investments and what the difference between the two are.
Are you referring to page 60 of the papers where we've got the executive summary, Nigel? Just so that we can be clear on where your question's coming from. Sorry, I'm running on 2 different papers. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Page 92, yes, sorry. Page 92, is that where you're referring to, Nigel? Sorry about that.
If I could come back on that, yes, I was referring to today's position rather than then, since the end of the year, we've withdrawn about 9 million of our investments, taken it down to the 22, the 10 million we have to keep as short-term investments, liquid funds, which I don't class, well, they are investments, but I don't really class them as such because we have to retain them to show that we are a going concern. Borrowing is, again, temporary borrowing. It's not what it is to supplement at that point in the year. It would have been to supplement cash flow purposes rather than proper borrowing for our capital programme. So that's why I consider that to be zero. And it's still zero at the moment. We don't have any borrowing on our capital programme.
Apologise. So thank you, Tina. Thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Nigel, for the question. Perhaps if there are, further in-depth questions, obviously, Tina would be happy, I'm sure, to meet with members to establish any further facts. I appreciate it's a little bit complicated, isn't it? So any further, did you put your hand up? Sorry.
I'm just happy to propose unless we've got further questions.
Thank you. So I'm happy to second. Were there any further questions from members? No. All of those in favour, please. Thank you. That's unanimous. Item 12 is the purchase of an additional affordable home under the local authority housing fund grant. Wendy, do you want to introduce us?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is the follow on from the LAFH Fund 1, or LAF as I like to call it, because it's just been an impossible task, but our officers have worked wonders with Flagship to actually get this off the ground. So we are now asking for authority to buy the outstanding 4-bedroom house that will be in our temporary accommodation portfolio. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I gather we're very much underway sitting with the work we need to do to purchase the property already, and want to obviously see this completed as soon as possible. So appreciate the work that's been done already. Were there any questions from members? Christopher, go ahead.
Just very simple. I'm just actually, where is it?
Are we disclosing that?
No. Because of the sensitive nature, it is in the North Norfolk district, but I can go offline and tell you where it is, but I'm not going to say that publicly.
Yeah, understood. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Okay, any further questions? No. Well, Wendy has proposed the recommendations that we approve the purchase of the 4-bed home. That's seconded by Lucy, and all those in favour, please. Yeah, unanimous again. Thank you. Item 13 is council loan to Homes for Wells to enable purchase of 2 properties. Go ahead.
Thank you. And the report is very clear in front of you by Graham and Nikki. And this is one of our fantastic local housing associations that buy homes for people in Wells, as the name suggests. And this is to enable them to buy 2 further homes for those residents that are on their waiting list. And those residents will be working in Wells and living in Wells and have connections in Wells. So I'd like to put this before you and happy to answer any questions or Graham's here.
Yeah, thank you. Well, certainly, fantastic organisation, one which, I wish we could clone and put in other localities around the district. Certainly like to see one in my own town, but might be a bit of a difficult ambition to realise, of course. Graham, is there anything you wanted to add at this stage?
No, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to help if there are.
Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, were there any further questions? Liz, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question about, and I'm assuming it's probably to do with viability, why it's gone for a social housing rent and then an affordable rent rather than two social housing?
You're absolutely correct. It's difficult for Homes for Wells to make both rents at affordable rents, so they're proposing one at an intermediate rent and one at an affordable rent. But bearing in mind the intermediate rent is significantly below what the market rent would be and is affordable for people on the Homes for Wells housing list. So it will meet a definite housing need.
Thank you, Graham. I thought it probably was, but I just thought it was useful to clarify that even organisations like Homes for Wells are still having to think about viability.
So thank you. Thank you for clarification of the question. Anyone else? No. Okay, so Wendy has made the recommendation, which is for the application, the approval of the loan of 110,000 to Homes for Wells to help with the purchase of the two properties, seconded by Lucy, and all of those in favour, please, unanimous again. Graham, thank you ever so much for your time on that one. Item 14 is the discretionary disabled facilities grant policy. I've been very pleased to see this one come forward. It's certainly of interest to me. So Wendy, go ahead.
Hello, me again. So this is something I'm really, really proud of. It's a discretionary version of the disabled facilities grant. This is going to enable smaller loans to be, or smaller grants to be applied faster to those that need that adaptation desperately. And if there's any questions, I'm here, or Samantha's here, and I just want to say thank you so much for the team for forming this plan, and I'm very proud of them.
Okay, well, this looks fantastic. I've got to say, I'm really pleased to see this come forward. It cleared up quite a few things in my own mind as to how discretionary facilities grants work anyway. So that was useful reading. But it certainly seems to me this is needed. We would be doing the right thing in formulating and agreeing such a policy. I can see that. So I don't have any questions. I don't know if there's any from members. Go ahead, Andrew. Yeah.
Just accept to say, Mr. Chairman, any scheme that supports that residents to remain comfortably and safely in their own homes has got to be applauded, because it relieves pressure on the NHS in terms of admissions into hospitals. So it's a wholly well thought out and needed scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucy, go ahead.
I'd just like to highlight the compassionate change on page 134, where we've got the fast track end of life grant. It will help many people who are in a very difficult, awful circumstance to ensure that end of life is as comfortable and as peaceful and as dignified as possible. So thank you for adding that in. It's really powerful.
Truly very extensive in scope, isn't it? Yeah, yeah. Wendy, go ahead.
This actually does fit in with the integrated care board's plans to bring more care into people's homes than keeping people in hospital. So I think this is a very timely piece of work and a very timely decision that we're making now to help that process happen.
Yep. Okay. Any further questions, any points? No. Well, I think Wendy has proposed we accept the policy as per the recommendations, seconded by Andrew. All those in favour, please. That's unanimous. Thank you again for your time. So item 15 we have completed already. And item 16 is the Marham's Bowls Club and the proposed redevelopment. So we do have a few cabinet members, I believe, named as potential introductory speakers, but I'll start with yourself, Lucy.
I'm happy to kick things off, so to speak. What we have is a asset which is well loved by members of our community, with an issue that's possibly been known to us for at least 8 years. I feel that there is possibly more that we could investigate. And I don't think that this perhaps paints the picture to the general public of the investigation that could be done and what else could be done on the site. I appreciate all the effort that's gone into the report, obviously, and the sensitive nature of it, but I would welcome cabinet colleagues' input as to where they would wish to go with this.
Okay. Well, thank you for that introduction. Renata, thank you for joining us. You've come in the last couple of minutes. Is there anything you'd like to say at this stage to introduce this item? Thank you.
Thank you. So the report details a proposal to redevelop and refurbish the building, partly to deal with urgent essential repairs and also to improve the energy performance of the property to meet the council's net zero priorities. The proposal also includes a lease renewal to the existing tenants, but an opportunity also to generate additional income through concession pitches, which there is always strong demand in the local area for those. And the proposal that we've put forward is one that we feel is a viable proposition to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Renata. Yeah, very much appreciate the work you've done here. And not an easy one really to find the answers to really. It's certainly, you know, been a known issue for a while. It's time we found a way of dealing with it one way or another. That said, I think what members would probably like to see is a little bit more explanation around the reasons why we couldn't go for a slightly bigger, more profitable in terms of revenue scheme, in terms of the 2-story restaurant on the site. So I appreciate there are some planning constraints there, which I feel we need to see some more detail on. And second, anxiety, I suppose, about moving forward as envisaged would be around capturing that footfall into those concessions. So those of you unfamiliar with the site, very close to Runton Road car park, our largest car park in the district. So quite literally thousands of people wandering past this site every day. I think it's absolutely imperative we try and capture that footfall to make such concessions on the site work and reduce or mitigate the impacts in terms of costs to us and make this deliverable. Obviously, there are positive net zero implications in terms of redeveloping and improving the building. But that aside, I feel we want to probably see a little bit more of a conversation around those factors with the concessions and planning constraints before we are truly comfortable in proceeding. I think that's fair to say. Would other members like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'd be remiss if I wasn't to thank officers for this report. I think, you know, the chosen scheme here does have merit. You know, it is important that we're looking into you know, possible redevelopment, and that would have a massive effect on our reduction of our carbon footprint. However, I do agree with both yourself and Councillor Shires that we do some more investigatory works to see what else would be possible. So I'm happy to support that. Thank you.
Liz, go ahead.
Thank you. Again, I'd like to reinforce thanks for this report, and it's done what probably reports need to do as part of being a proposal, is actually to stimulate more questions and get us really thinking about what this project entails. And from that respect, I'm in agreement. It's a very significant site, probably one of the most significant that we might be dealing with in terms of NNDC's assets for quite some time. So I do feel we need that greater investigation into that. But I would like to reiterate what an important community asset it is. And I wouldn't want the community, and in particular the Bowls Club, to feel that by doing this we are reducing our concern for their interests. I think it's about making sure that this is right for everybody, including the golf club.
Yeah.
Bowls Club even.
Well, you're possibly right to mention
Yeah,
that as well in
yes.
terms of the neighbouring putting facilities. There is a drainage issue here, not a drainage issue, a water supply issue, I should say, affecting both sites. So it's certainly linked to that as well. And yeah, I agree with what you say. You know, there's a lot of heritage here in terms, you know, this club is I believe over 100 years old now. It's providing you know, a valuable community resource for its members, exercise, socialization, and also visitors do obviously use the facility as well. So there are all sorts of elements here. There are obviously a range of options going forward, but I think we certainly don't see it in terms of disposing of the site, closing down the club as at all palatable. I think we want to find a way forward that works, and it looks like most of that investigatory work has been done here. But I think we've got to be comfortable and ensure, I suppose, that we're gaining as much revenue to make this work as possible. Wendy, go ahead.
I think it could be explored as well about
Sorry, could you say that again?
sorry. I think it should be looked at that this, if we were to do the works, that other groups could actually use the facilities as well.
Yeah, I suppose for areas like Cromer, there is a quite an abundance of community spaces as such. So there's never going to be that need for additional meeting space, etc. The bowls green is always going to be, you know, a bowls green. You can't adapt it, unfortunately, to any other purpose. But that said, clubhouse concession facilities can provide for all sorts of different uses. Lucy, go ahead.
Just as to where we go from here then. So if I'm hearing everybody, we need some more information about how we're going to promote the concessions in terms of footfall and directing them to where they need to be. And we want to make sure we've maximised income generation on the site, and we want to make sure we've got a final understanding of any planning constraint or non-constraint as to any ambition we've got there. And if that's what I'm understanding from Cabinet, then I'm happy to propose that we defer this until the next meeting where we've got a little bit more information.
Okay. Seconded by Liz. Were there any questions on that approach? Nigel, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just clarify a few points, if I may, please. Starting with the recommendation, the proposal that I read on page 146, the top, the proposal option 4 to redevelop the clubhouse. Option 4, according to my papers, is the reduced scale of repairs. That's the roof and windows discounted as it doesn't meet the net zero priorities. Am I right?
Thank you, Nigel. That's correct. I think there's an error there.
I guess my point there, Mr. Chairman, is if we haven't got that bit right, which is pretty basic, I haven't looked at it in great detail, but I wonder what else we might have awry in this. My second point relates to, well, for a building known to be in poor condition for several years, I guess I have to ask, what forward funding provisions were there in our property maintenance plan, and what might have been in the budget in that regard?
First of all, I didn't quite understand the first question because I think it was around the options considered. So it wasn't a recommendation as such. I mean, it's possibly for others to answer, but I'm aware that the issues with this particular structure and many other amenity facilities have been known for some time. I think the council has been moving strides forward in terms of addressing them. We've still got some way to go. Many of the coastal properties, for instance, various concession sites had been empty for some time. We've moved quite a long way in finding tenants for those. Some of them are very challenging, but in this case and several others, the deterioration certainly caught up with us. It's obviously in a very exposed location in terms of the weather conditions that site sees. But I couldn't answer your precise question in terms of how, to what extent we knew about this. I think, as I say, about 8 years ago. So I don't know if anyone else wants to pick up on that point. Go ahead.
I just looking at Councillor Dixon's first comment. Is it because it's perhaps option 5 on page 145, and there's just been a slight error? I don't think it's anything significant in terms of there's nothing else hidden within the report. Obviously, property services is sat in my portfolio now for a number of years, and what I've learned is that having sat in the previous administration is that when we did take the council in 2019, the estate had been largely underinvested in, and that's what we're working now towards. I wish that I could wave a magic wand with unlimited funds and put everything right now, but we can't, because we don't generally have the reserve to be able to do that. But we are doing things prioritised on need with best intention for the North Norfolk taxpayer. I know that doesn't answer your question, and I'm not looking to poke blame historically, but in the most basic of ways, we are where we are, and we're working hard to improve the condition of our estate.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's right that we do that. Recognise, of course, we've got responsibilities across the district, and many of those. Nigel, go ahead.
Thank you for that explanation. I think you probably know the point I'm really driving at here is, and that is about planning ahead and making adequate provisions for those dilapidations, those demands on maintaining building condition, asset condition, does require forward planning, and this doesn't seem to have the hallmarks of forward planning about it. Yes, I take the point about prioritization. That will always be the case, but I think that it's about having an assurance that we're thinking ahead, we're making provisions ahead, so that we don't get caught by, you know, requests for additional funding at a time then perhaps we might not necessarily be best prepared for them. So it is about trying to anticipate those kind of things coming down the track. So I'm happy to leave it at that point, but I've got one other point that I just would like to make, and this is a point of commendation, really. I thought how good it was to see the build-up sheets with regard to this work. And could I suggest that this might be a model that would be really helpful if we saw this kind of layout in respect, and I think probably most people know what's coming, but it would be really helpful if we saw that kind of information in relation to the 400,000 being spent at North Walsham in regard to the Heritage Action Zone. So I commend it as an example of that sort of thing that we are looking for. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Lucy, go ahead.
Just to touch on that and re-extend the invitation to come and visit us in North Walsham. You are asking that the detailed breakdown, this is the pinnacle point of the questions that have been asked in overview and scrutiny previously, the most recent meeting and subsequently since. You are asking for operational level detail of the bricks and mortar of the scheme. Just for clarity.
I wouldn't describe it as operational level of detail at all, any more than some of the figures here. I don't say that you need to go to quite this level, but certainly we need to have a level of detail that covers precisely what's been asked for, really, and I would just leave it at that.
Okay, anything to add? Go ahead.
I am slightly amazed that we've managed to turn this agenda item into further questions about the North Walsham HAS scheme. But I'm happy to work with officers offline if this is the final request on this scheme.
Yeah, okay, I think that's sensible. I mean, obviously recommend to the chair of open scrutiny that does take up that offer for the meeting in North Walsham. And obviously it's a work in progress. And I also, you know, commend the work that's been done here to try and, you know, establish the costs of this scheme. We're obviously very keen to make it work. And I think, you know, this is the basis of what we will see. But I suppose for comfort's sake, we want to be sure of a few more of those factors. I remember, of course, you know, the planning constraints on the site have been raised before in the development committee, for instance, over the neighbouring site. But we really would like to see, you know, something more made of, you know, the potential, if at all possible. But I think we just need a greater understanding of those constraints, really. Christopher, you did indicate, sorry.
Thank you. A couple of questions, if I may. As just mentioned, we got some very detailed costs in terms of the contracted out work, but we don't seem to have anything here about the internal costs that this would incur. So we're talking about things in terms of planning application, legal, property, which you've just mentioned. So what might they be and when might we know what they are? And presumably that would be on top of the 354 and 400k that you're potentially looking at here.
Just to clarify your question, you said internal cost. Did you mean by that planning applications or internal fixture? Okay, sure. I don't know if you can help us with that, Renata, or do you want to answer that, Lucy?
Is this relating to page 163 of the report, Christopher?
Well, yes.
Yes, when they cover that, they are other costs that should be incurred. So.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So there was 50,000 originally allocated as budget, and we were asking for additional 350 to cover the cost of the refurbishment, and the 50,000 would deal with the planning and other legal costs. Thank you.
No, thank you.
400k is effectively the sum that you'd be looking for. Well, sort of related, well, not really, on the same subject, and I'll rest it there for today at least anyway. Got mentions of a rent review with the Bowls Club and 3 new concessions income streams, but there aren't any forecasts that I can see in the paper. So what would they be in terms of increased income?
Okay. I believe it is in purple papers, but we certainly do need to ensure we are receiving a higher revenue from that facility in terms of the rental. So I don't know if we can provide any exact figures at this stage.
So for members' information, it is those issues are addressed or outlined in paragraphs 3 and 4 of the exempt appendix. That is because at this stage, any concessions would be let on a competitive advertisement basis, on the basis of bids that were made to the authority. And there's also commentary made in respect of an aspiration for the rent of the pavilion building itself. But I think this issue, which is a very legitimate question to ask and relates to earlier comments by the committee, that many of the district councils, particularly seafront or cliff top assets, have limited commercial potential because of the seasonality of activity. And whilst the chairman, leader of the council, said that this is a prime location adjacent to a principal car park where footfall is high, there is still a very strong element of seasonality to that profile. It's not a town centre location. And so in Cromer, in Sheringham and in Munsley, where the authority has concessions, there is a limit in terms of the income, rental income that they would generate. And that then also has implications on the authority in terms of investment in condition and dilapidation in what is, you know, a very exposed environment, and also in the context of the net zero agenda, which obviously has increased significantly in recent times, requires us to consider a level of investment to reduce, improve energy efficiency, reduce carbon impact, net zero impact. And so these are challenging decisions in terms of the authority's investment in our property portfolio. And I choose those words carefully because I don't think they are always assets. In some respects, maintaining that infrastructure is a liability and responsibility on the authority.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I think you're entirely right. And you're right to point out as well, there is a seasonal element there, but I think you know, any concession present in that location would certainly be hoping to see some significant revenue given the footfall that goes past there many months of the year. Okay, so recognizing, you know, I think this is the basis for how we may well move forward. But I think members want to see a deferral, seek just a bit more clarity around planning constraints and the concession opportunities in terms of just how we're dragging that footfall past the concessions that we potentially envisage here. Were there any other details you wanted to see in greater detail at that later stage? Wendy, go ahead.
Funny enough, I'm talking about temporary accommodation again. So the temporary accommodation of the club as well. We need to know what that would entail.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I personally would struggle to justify temporary accommodation for the clubhouse facilities. I think obviously, you know, we want to try and ensure that the green is kept playable. They I think rightly so, pride themselves on their green. It is very lovely what they've achieved with that. I know nothing about balls, so I can't say very much more, but maybe one day. However, I think, you know, it's only fair we sort of try and reduce costs where we can, and I think that's certainly an area where I think we would struggle to justify a provision of, say, a porta cabin or something whereas there might be alternative existing premises nearby which they could perhaps use, for instance, nearby hotels, etc. So that would be my personal preference on that matter. And I think you're right to bring that up. Okay, so we propose deferral, sorry, and seek further details around planning constraints and ability to deliver sustainable concessions on the site. So that's proposed, seconded by Andrew. You were putting your hand up secondly. Or did you want to say something? Yeah. And all of those in favour, please. Okay. All right. Well, thank you ever so much for the work done on this so far, Renato. We will get this resolved at some point soon. I appreciate you've put a lot of time into this issue for some, considerable time now, and it's been it is a challenge. It is a challenge, I think, as Steve has said, to ensure these assets are sustainable for the long term, and they are, in many respects, liabilities. Given the location, given the seasonality, given so many different factors, but we've got to grasp that challenge, and I'm confident over the next few years we'll make some real headway in doing that. But it's obviously considerable expenditure needed in some cases. Okay, so I think that's all on that item, and in respect of exclusion of press and public office, there's no reason to do that. There's no private business. So thank you all for your attendance, and look forward to the next